You may not have to go back after that, do the other chemos, because last week they said that.
When the video starts, turn that off. That's where the echo comes through. Gotcha.
He said he's got all his blisters in his mouth. His mouth is covered, but his mouth is numb, small, surgery.
Sure. But he will. Yeah. That's going to be a rough road back. Who else are we praying for?
The family of Dr. James Sampley. He was Minor Robbins preacher in our youth years in James Memorial. He retired from preaching, if you call it that, down in Asheville, First Baptist Church of Asheville.
What was his last name?
Sampling,
yeah.
He's in, his daughter posted that he's got FTD, dementia, but he's physically stable, but it's just, they're not trying, they just ask for prayer.
Sure.
No visits, no anything like that.
Right. Who else? Okay. All right. Nathan, will you pray for us?
Absolutely. Let's pray. Father, Heaven, thank you again for another day. Father, for this Sunday that we woke up to be anywhere else, doing anything else. But we made a choice this morning to get up, come to your house to give you praise, honor, and glory. And I know without a shadow of a doubt it's not an accident. Father, we are here for a reason. Father, we have come this morning to meet with you, so I pray that your presence is felt and that you will speak boldly to each of us, that our ears are open to a word that Brett will bring, not his word, but your word. Speak through him this morning, Father. I lift up each and every prayer request that was mentioned this morning. You know each and every need, each and every unspoken that is on our hearts, Father. Just pray that your presence is there, that your healing hand is where it needed to be. Father, just being here with us now, speak to us. It's in the name of Jesus.
Amen. We're going to watch the video of just the little 10-minute kind of summary of what Kyle was talking about in chapter 3. A little bit. I thought it was strange, like the book chapter 3 and then the lesson guide session 3 seemed to be totally different to me. Vista, did you notice that? Like if you read chapter 3 in the book, you think that's what the lesson's about, and it's not for some reason. So I'm going to veer away from the lesson and talk about what's in the book, because I think that's...
I kind of explained it last week.
Yeah.
This is for doing the weekly.
Right.
It goes along with the weekly.
Right. Yeah. So we'll touch on some of that and some of that we won't. But there's an interesting question that comes up this week. That's what do I need to do? Like, what do I do? Because I think even if you don't necessarily buy into this whole Kyle Idleman fan follower comparison, even if you don't, if you've got questions about that, I think we all agree that we want to be followers, and it has to be more than just the general, admiration or fanaticism that we see. You see that a lot on Saturdays especially in the South. There was some preacher I saw one time, just real quick. I think I'm getting off script here, but it was he was explaining to the congregation. He said, I've got this. There's this symbol that really represents who I am, and so much so that I'd say half my clothing has this symbol somewhere on it or this color scheme. I said, when I see people wearing this, like it is, the whole time there's a picture of a cross on the screen, right? He says, when I see somebody else that's got this on, like I'm instantly, like there's a bond there. I feel comfortable with them. I understand we have something to talk about. We can get along with there. It's like when we're in big groups, I always drift toward this people with this, this kind of thing. And of course, the cross is up there. And then eventually he gets to it. You know what's coming. He puts the Alabama A up there, and it's like, oh, this is it. You're right. Because if you go to Tuscaloosa on Saturdays, there's the tailgate, and like if you're wearing like a sweatshirt or a hat that's got an A on it, man, people offer you food. Come over here, but like you don't even know these people, but you just automatically draw them to it. Like it's just sort of represents a lot of who you are, right? And then this pastor was sort of making the comparison. Like sometimes it's kind of how we feel like Christianity is. Like it's we totally agree with it, like it's something great, but we really haven't. When you read the Bible, Jesus never wanted that. Like he wanted more than that. And so that's kind of a good thing about what we're going to see today in Luke chapter 7. It's a great illustration of this position where there's two people, Jesus is in front of two people, and one is totally devoted, and the other is just really wants to be, but he's really not. And he's right there, and how he interacts with both of them, I think is really, really, really powerful. So anyway, we'll go ahead, let's hit that video, and then we'll jump into it.
So I'm standing mid-court of a gym, and when you walk into the gym to watch a game, you decide which side you're going to sit on. So you buy your ticket, you come in, and you recognize which team you're going to be cheering for, and then you choose a side that reflects your allegiance to that team. You decide what team you're going to be rooting for when the game gets tense. You want to make sure you're sitting with the right people, cheering for the right team. But you got to make a choice, right? When you walk in, you have to choose sides. And is there anything more annoying than someone who tries to be on both sides? Especially when it's a rivalry. So if it's Oklahoma playing Oklahoma State, you got to choose. You have to choose a side. If it's Texas playing Texas A&M, if it's Duke playing North Carolina, if it's the University of Louisville playing University of Kentucky, you have to choose one side or the other. It can't be both. Eventually, you've got to decide which side you're going to be on. And Jesus is clear that when we follow Him, that there's no other side. We can't say, well, I'm going to follow Jesus part-time, and then part of the time I'm going to live for myself. I'm going to do things my way in this area of my life, but when it comes to my money, when it comes to my relationships, I'll do things a different way. That you have to choose what side you're going to be on. Jesus says that those who follow Jesus, that they should love Him with all of their heart, with all their soul, with all their mind, with all of their strength. The word there is all. It's the kind of relationship that He wants to have with you where you're all in. You're all in. That Jesus is not one of many, but He is your one and only. One of the times Jesus makes this really clear is when He is speaking to a huge crowd of people on the side of a hill in John chapter 6. And Jesus says to the crowd in verse 26, He says, if anyone wants to follow me, and does not hate his father or his mother, his wife, children, his brothers and sisters, he cannot be my disciple. And he goes on to say, and anyone who does not carry a cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Do you hear what he says? Jesus says that if you're going to follow me, it means hating your family. Really? You have to hate your family? You have to hate Nana to follow Jesus? Or Mima, Muma, Grandma, whatever you call her? You have to hate your family to follow Jesus? Why does He use such strong language? Well, obviously, that would contradict all of His other teachings about loving our neighbor. So what's He mean by this? Well, Jesus is using such strong language because in that culture, if you were to become a follower of Jesus, there's a decent chance you would have to do so without your family's blessing. And if you were to follow Jesus against your parents' desires, if you were to follow Jesus against your family's will, then it would be as if you hated your family. You were turning your back on them. And some of you get this because you've been thinking about making a decision. You've been thinking about stepping over a line and choosing a side and saying, I'm going to follow Jesus and I'm going to go all in. But you're afraid it's going to hurt your mom's feelings. You're afraid your dad's going to think it's ridiculous, that your friends won't like you as much. And so you want to follow Jesus, but you just kind of want Him to be this compartment of your life, just part of it. But you want to keep other parts of your life separate. You kind of have another side that He doesn't impact. But Jesus says, look, if you're not willing to choose me over your family, then you probably ought to just go home. A college student caught me after church one weekend and said that she wanted to put her trust in Jesus, and we talked for a few minutes, and we prayed together. And she was ready to be baptized right then. She wanted to be baptized. I thought when she was talking about that decision that she was speaking of a time in the future when her family could come and kind of celebrate that moment with her. But there was a sense of urgency in her voice. She said, no, you don't understand. I want to be baptized right now. So a few minutes later, we're backstage and getting ready to step into the water. She seemed a little bit nervous. I wanted to make her feel more confident. I said, do you have any family or friends that are here to cheer you on? She said, no. And then she added, my parents are not going to be happy about this. She looked down and she took a deep breath. She walked out in front of me into the water. Here's what I'm saying. Fans don't do that. Fans are not willing to follow Jesus if it means disappointing their family. They're happy to follow Jesus, but when it starts to interfere with their other relationships, when following Him starts to hurt their popularity with other people, then that's asking too much. And so they try and be on both sides. But it just talks here about hating your father and mother to follow Him. I think the point he is making is that He must come before every other relationship. The New Living Translation puts verse 26 this way: if you want to be my follower, you must love me more than your own mother and father, more than your wife and children, your brothers and sisters. You must love Him more than. And see, what fans want to do is they want to make Jesus one of many. Where Jesus wants to have the throne of a fan will say, well, I'll give you a love seat. I'll give you a couch of my heart, and you can sit there and you can share the space with these other people or with these other things in my life. And Jesus says, no, that's not how it works. It's all or nothing. Jesus doesn't want to just be one of the drawers in the dresser of your life. He wants to be the dresser that all the drawers fit into. The Bible says that God is a jealous God. So when He defines the relationship, He makes it clear that you need to choose sides here. You need to go all in. Imagine it this way, and this is strictly pretend, all right? We are just imagining. But let's imagine that this week you walk into a restaurant and you see me sitting at a table and having a candlelit dinner with a woman who is not my wife. You come up to me and you confront me and you say, who is this woman? What are you doing? This isn't your wife. And I respond, I say, look, don't worry about it, okay? My wife and I have a date night on Friday. It's Wednesday, so I'm out with this beautiful lady tonight. And you just walk away angry and disgusted, and you decide somebody needs to tell his wife, and you're the person to do it, and you call her and you break the news to her. So, again, just imagining, but when I come home from that date, what do you think her response will be? Let's just imagine. My wife meets me at the door and says, honey, nice to see you. Did you have a nice time on your date? And then she comes over and gives me a big kiss. Says, I don't mind you seeing other people as long as I know Friday's my night, as long as I know I'm important to you. That would never, as soon as I walked in the door from that date, I would be terrified. I would fear for my life, because if my wife even heard about me eating at McDonald's with a man who kind of looked like a woman, I'd be in trouble. Now, why is that? Because she loves me. Her refusal to share me does not indict her as being insecure or possessive, but it proves that she is devoted to me. She loves me. She wants my whole heart. And look, God has said, I'm not going to share you. You choose. Jesus explains that if you follow Him, you don't do this part-time or halfway. He's not looking for fair weather fans who cheer for Him on one side but then switch sides as soon as it becomes inconvenient. He wants followers who are so good that they are willing to die for Him. A few years ago, I was back in some pretty deep tribal areas of Africa. One night I finished preaching to a crowd of a few dozen people, and I presented the gospel to them, the invitation of Jesus to follow. And there were two young men, I'm guessing in their mid-20s, who accepted Christ and His invitation, and they made this commitment to follow Jesus. Well, get this, the following afternoon, those two men showed up at the house where we were staying, but each of them carried this good-sized bag over their shoulder. And I went over and I asked the local missionary we were staying with, why are they here and why have they come? And he explained that those two men would no longer be welcomed by their families or in their village. When I heard that, I was afraid that maybe this was going to be more than they had signed up for, more than they were willing to go along with. But about that time, the missionary said to me, they knew this would happen when they made the decision. So what are they doing? They're choosing Jesus over the ones they love the most. Choosing Jesus over their own comfort and convenience, and fans don't do this. Followers are willing to deny themselves and say, look, I choose Jesus. They're willing to walk in and go to His side and say, I choose Jesus over money, and I choose Jesus over career goals, and I choose Jesus over getting drunk. I choose Jesus over looking at porn. I choose Jesus over a redecorated house. I choose Jesus over my freedom. I choose Jesus over what other people may think of me. I choose Jesus. And that's the side that they go to. They choose Jesus over anything and everything in life. And so a follower doesn't stand mid-court with torn allegiance. A follower makes a decision every day to deny themselves and to follow Christ.
We're going to skip this. Probably don't need that kind of effect on here. So we're going to skip that next slide. If you got your Bibles, if you'll, I might have muted it. There we go. If you'll open up to Luke chapter, that's where we're going to be. I want to get into that, and I want to run out of time. So if you'll skip, yeah, there it is. Like you're going to see some things here that I think just perfectly illustrate the difference. And I know where I found myself those years ago when I really struggled with this type of thing. So Luke chapter 7 is where we are. And we're going to be there for the next 25, 30 minutes, hopefully. So if Joby Martin is a preacher in down in Florida. He's a pastor down there who's a great pastor. You ever listen to Joby Martin? It's fantastic. Good, just real. It's kind of like a redneck guy, but he's from Florida, so it's kind of weird. Bodybuilder. Anyway, he tells this story. So he when he was in college and seminary, he got his first job at a church as a youth minister. And they couldn't pay him a full-time salary, so he was working part-time, and he got a job at the local gym, because that was his thing, working during the day. Well, this gym is right across the street from the Crazy Horse Gentlemen's Club down in the city he's in, which is fine, right? So he's working in the gym, and the owner of the gym is a smart guy. He walks across the street to the Gentlemen's Club, and he offers all the girls free membership to the gym. They can work out anytime they want to. And so after he does this, like his membership tripled at his gym after that. So he's, smart guy, right? So anyway, Joby's working there, and he's working down thing. And when times got slow, he would go up to the smoothie bar, and he'd work on his sermon notes or whatever. He'd be up there just kind of working on stuff. And he got to know a lot of the girls. They would come in and work out and do things like that. So he gets to talking to them, he gets to meet them, and he found out a couple of things, and I'm just using his words. He learned they had actual names. Not Bambi or Cinnamon, but Carla and Sharon, like really. And he learned that they all had a few things in common. He said none of them wanted the job they had, right? Almost all of them got that job thinking they would only do it for a short time because they were in some financial strain. And almost every one of them were in that financial situation due to a man leaving them. Most of them had kids. And they didn't want their kids to have any idea what they did to make money. And all of them had to drink or do some kind of substance before they performed. He talks to these girls, and he gets to know these girls, and he invites them to church. Well, one particular girl actually goes with him to church. So they go, and he gives her a ride. They go to church, church service, and he said, and it was like, if you didn't know, you would know what she did for a living by what she was wearing when she came. Like it was just obvious, right? It was just obvious. So they go to the service. Service is over. They're walking out, and the deacons grabs him and says, "Hey, can I see you in the pastor's office real quick?" And he said, "Sure." So he walks down there. She goes home in the car. He walks in there, and they sit down. They're waiting, and then pretty soon the pastor and a couple more deacons walk in, and they say this. Explained that the purpose of the church was to protect its members, and especially their children, from, quote, women like that. So Joey leaves, he walks out to the car, and she is squalling, because she knows what they're talking about, right? Even though they didn't say it, like she knows exactly. So he walks out there, and he says, I tried to lie. I tried to lie and say we were talking about something else, but she knew. And he said, how disgusting is it that a woman like that feels more degraded in a church that has the name of Jesus Christ on it than she does in front of a bunch of drunk guys on vacation. She feels more accepted in that environment than she ever did when she sat amongst God's people, listening to the Word of God. It's supposedly in the safest place. Like, I think that image, to me, I read that story years and years ago. I don't even know when that was, when he said that, and I heard it, but that has stuck with me. And when I read Luke chapter 6, I get this same thing. Luke chapter 7. So here we go. Luke chapter 7, verse 36. You ready? Then one of the Pharisees invited him to eat with him. He entered the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. 37, and a woman in the town who was a sinner. Anytime a woman who was a sinner, that is this Bible speak for a prostitute, found out that Jesus was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house. She brought an alabaster jar of perfume, verse 38, and stood behind him at his feet, weeping, and began to wash his feet with her tears. She wiped his feet with her hair, kissing them and anointing them with her perfume. Okay, first of all, that's a little gross. Like, I can't get past that. But anytime I think like kissing somebody's feet and like washing them with my hair, like I just think, oh, like I can't get over it. But like but in those days, that particular act, besides being kind of gross, was very suggestive. For a woman to take down her hair and take her veil off was something she only did at home in front of her husband. And so to do this in someone else's house in front of the preacher is weird. Okay, this would have been a shocking thing. No matter what she did for a living, this would have been inappropriate to say the least. Okay, she evidently did not get the memo on how to act when the preacher came over for dinner. So everybody is awkward, embarrassed, right? This makes everyone in the room uncomfortable, as it would, right? As it would. Here's verse 39. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "This man, if he actually were a prophet, would know who kind of woman this is who is touching him. She's a sinner." And Jesus replied to him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." Did you catch, like, who was he talking to when he said that? Himself. Which I thought was kind of Jesus just saying, I know, if I were actually a prophet. Like, I could hear him like reading his mind and thinking, I'll just take care of this. So he answers him to a thought that he had, which I thought in itself is pretty impressive to me. But then he says, Simon said, "Say it, teacher." 41. A creditor had two debtors. So Jesus says to him, a creditor had two debtors, one 500 denarii and the other 50. Since they could not repay it back, he graciously forgave them both. So which one of them will love him more? Verse 43, and Simon answered, I suppose the one who forgave more. That sounds like he's sort of just like, okay, like it's Captain Obvious, right? And then he said to her, your sins are forgiven. You have judged correctly, he told them. Turning to the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house and you gave me no water for my feet, but she, with her tears, has washed my feet and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but she hasn't stopped kissing my feet since I came in. You didn't anoint my head with olive oil, but she anointed my feet with perfume. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. That's why she loved much. But the one who is forgiven little loves little. Those who were at the table with him began to say among themselves, who is this man who even forgives sins? This is one of those points where I don't get why people think that Jesus never claimed to be God, right? Because that's an argument that Jesus never said he was God. And I guess he never says like those words, I am God, I am, like he never said that. But when he forgives this woman's sins, God is the only one that can do that, right? Like if somebody walks up and slaps Nathan in the face and I happen to be standing there and I say, and just, oh, it's okay, you're forgiven. Like, he wouldn't appreciate that. Like, wait a second, that's my forgiveness to give. Like, I'm the one that got slapped. Sin is against God. And so God is the only one who can forgive sins. And so Jesus, by forgiving this woman's sins, he is indirectly saying and declaring that he is God. And everybody knew that. Everybody did. Like, we in the 20th century had the ones that decided he didn't say he was God. Everybody knew what Jesus was saying when he says these things. So he said in 49, he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Like, Here's the thing. The one difference that we have, that Christianity has from every other religion, the one thing that separates us from every other religion in the entire world is grace. Because every other religion is the opposite of that. Every other religion is you have to do these things. You have to achieve these goals. You have to live this way or have these traits or go to these places or check this list. And if you do all these things, then God will forgive you. Christianity is the exact opposite. And Jesus does this over and over and over again in the New Testament. He forgives them first. In Christianity, we are forgiven. We do not deserve any of the forgiveness that we have. Anything. The grace, we say amazing grace, and we just kind of say it because it's a song we've sung our whole lives. But grace is amazing. Like it is undescribable. The fact that we have done nothing to deserve, and yet we get. It's what the angels are amazed at, is grace. Not the creation of the world, not that God spoke things into existence or just moves all of existence at His will. The angels are not amazed by that. But grace, the fact that Jesus came to earth and lived and died for our sins, blows their minds. Grace is what this woman experienced. And what Simon, the Pharisee, hadn't gotten yet. And he had done everything else. Grace is a scandal, right? Like, because I think of this, like, this doesn't work in anywhere else. Like, let's just say, for instance, like we have this wages mentality. We are born and ingrained with a wages kind of mentality. You do these things, you earn this. If you don't do these things, you don't get that, right? If we see somebody, like, let's say me and Nathan. Nathan's building a boathouse right now. How's that going, by the way? Yeah, I bet it is. So he's been working on that thing for a long time, and it's taken like a while, right? I mean, like I'm just saying, you've been working by yourself. It's not a small job. It's not a one-man job, but you're doing it, right? Even though like people have offered help and you just say no and do yourself, it doesn't matter. So Nathan's building a boathouse, and it's going to be super nice when he's finished with it. Like it's going to be super nice. And I'm kind of waiting. I've been sort of like not coming around intentionally for the last couple months. But as soon as he gets it done, though, I'm there. But if I get there, like when he finishes it and I walk up and I just invite 100 people over, like, hey, I'm going to throw a party at my boathouse. It's going to be awesome. I bring y'all, I got the stuff, don't worry about it. And I've got everything else, got a big sign up there that says Causey's, whatever. And it's there, like, and we're all just high-fiving and having a good time. Woo! Well, what do you think Nathan's going to do? Like, he's going to be like, what are you talking about? I did this. Like, you didn't earn this boathouse. Like, you didn't build all this. I spent the last 18 years nailing this thing together and putting these things up there. I didn't ask anybody for help. I turned everybody down that offered. I did this all myself. You can't come up here and claim like that would be a thing, right? Right. It would be just like that. Like we have this wages mentality. And so if we see somebody who obviously has not earned, and then they get that, like it bothers me. Does it bother you? Like you ever had that thought? Like when you read the news, you're thinking, well, they don't deserve that. They didn't earn that. They didn't do what they were supposed to do to get that. They shouldn't get that. Right? That's how we're wired. Like that's how I can't get away from that. That is the exact opposite of everything in this book. Jesus didn't operate that way. This lady was a prostitute. Nothing about her lifestyle was acceptable to Jesus. Nothing about her past was good. And there's we could get into how she becomes a prostitute. Like we could get into that kind of questions on how that happens to a person. But none of that is good. And yet she walks into Jesus and within seconds is forgiven of her sins and walks out a saved woman. Now the Pharisee who's sitting at the same table, who invited Jesus over, he hasn't done anything that he's supposed to do, right? Jesus said, I came in here, you didn't give me any water for my feet. Because that's what you're supposed to do. Jesus was the pastor. And he'd invited the pastor over. And this guy's a Pharisee. And so the first thing he should have done was had a bowl of water at the door to wash his feet. And he could have done it himself, although he probably wouldn't have. But one of his servants could have done it. Or he could have at least had a bowl of water available for Jesus to wash his own feet. And that hadn't happened. Right? Customary greeting for someone with any kind of stature at this time was a kiss. The host should have met Jesus at the door and given him a kiss to welcome him. Should have done it. Would have done it for everybody else. He didn't do it for Jesus. Do you see this? And now he's sitting at the table, and this is a slap in his face. This is the Pharisee Simon telling Jesus, I don't really buy what you're selling, but you're like the popular, like your name's pretty big here, and I'm pretty big, so we're going to sit down and eat. I'm going to have you over. We're going to maybe talk a little theology. But he hasn't done anything he's supposed to do. And then this woman comes in who has no business being there. And she's washing Jesus' feet. She is kissing him. She is doing everything that the host should have done. Do you see the contrast that Jesus is painting here, right? There are three things. There are three things that she has that Simon does not have. And these are the three things that I think separate a fan and a follower. These are the three things that grace, when you actually experience grace, these are the three things that happen in your life. And so if you need a litmus test, this is a good one. The first one is unrestrained worship. Unrestrained worship. This woman comes in and is inappropriate in everything that she cannot control herself. You know what I mean? It is complete disregard for the status quo, for the societal rules. She is solely concerned with Jesus and showing him how much he is worth to her. Right? The fact that Simon and probably the other Pharisees are caught off guard by this sets up a really good point. And Jesus, when he explains, he says, he talks about two creditors, right? Or a creditor and two debtors who are, one has a whole bunch of money and one has a little bit of money. They're both forgiven, right? But I think what Simon doesn't get is that is not the point here. It's not that this woman has all of this sin that she needs grace for, and that Simon is this good Pharisee and he just needs a little bit of grace. The idea is not that God or Jesus loves bad people too. That is not the moral of this. Because the moral of this is Jesus loves bad people because that's the only kind of people that they are. And this woman was wholly in need of grace and forgiveness. And so was Simon in the same way. He just didn't realize it. He had been to church his whole life. He had gone to seminary. He had the status in the society. He was probably well regarded. He was probably pretty wealthy. He had been a successful businessman. He was respected among from his friends and the people in the community. From my perspective, these two are not equal. Here's a prostitute who, for maybe her own decisions or maybe something terrible has happened to her, she has found herself in a lifestyle that is at the bottom of societal hierarchy, right? She is down there with just the worst of society is who she mingles with on a daily basis. And she is using her body in ways that are never intended by God. And yet Jesus sees these two people the same because he knows the truth that we need forgiveness no matter what. And no matter what you've done or have lived or the boxes you've checked or what you do in this world, you are a sinner, which means you are as far away from God as she is. And Simon couldn't get it. He didn't get it. So he's sitting there at this table and he's not doing anything he's supposed to do for Jesus. He's not treating him the way he should be treated because he thinks he's got a leg up. And he doesn't realize they're in the same boat. And she does immediately. Which I think is why Jesus always said, it's hard for rich people to get into heaven. It's hard for good people to get into heaven because they think they're good. They think they've got some kind of advantage, and there is no advantage outside of grace. There is no advantage. You are either saved or you are not, and nothing else matters. Nothing else. Unrestrained worship is when you realize that grace is, when you get that, when you see grace for what it is, then your worship becomes like white hot, unrestrained. And you don't care what people think. You don't care if this is appropriate in this time. I think of Chris Walker. Like, is he in here? He was, wasn't he? Oh, there he is. Like, he's the king of inappropriate, right? Like, if we're in church, like I can tell. I don't even have to wait till the music gets soft. I'll hear Chris. Like, I usually know where he's sitting after about one song, right? I can't usually see him because he moves around a lot. But then after we sing a song, I know where Chris is because I'll hear it. Like, it's usually over here on the right, and he's hollering and hooping and like I can hear it. And nobody else is, maybe. Like, not all the time. There's some other people saying it, but sometimes it's nobody else. And Chris don't care. Like, he doesn't. Does he strike you as the kind of person that cares what you think about him? No. And then we laugh, but like that's exactly what this woman was. Care. She was a prostitute. She had no business being there. The fact that she walked into that house would have given every one of her colleagues pause, right? They would have never come. And she did. And she did not care because Jesus was there, right? And she didn't care about Simon, and she didn't care about the consequences or how that looked. Jesus was there. So she walks in, and then when she gets in there, you know it was weird, right? You know it was weird. You know they're like, whoa, hang on a second, what's she doing here? Like, who ordered this one? Like, this has got to be a situation. But should she stop? Does she explain herself? Does she ask permission? She just walks right up to Jesus, and she lets her hair down, and she takes her veil off, and she is weeping because she knows that she can't do anything, and she needs what he's got, which is grace. And Simon didn't get it. Number 2, the second thing that happens, I'm hurrying y'all, I'm sorry. Acceptance of others. I think it's important to note that Luke describes her as a woman who is a sinner. She's not just a prostitute. She's a woman who is a sinner. Because at first, she's a child of God. She is created in his image. She is. And whatever she's done with that is moot at this point. She is a woman who is a sinner. I think this is important because I think back to Joby Martin's story that he told. If there is anywhere on this planet that people should be comfortable, it should be church. They should not be ashamed here. Not that their actions or whatever they're doing or who they are is good. Not affirmation. But they should be comfortable in the house of God. Because they were always comfortable around Jesus. This woman lets her hair down. She would have never done that in public. And she would have never done that from another man. And she does that in Jesus because she knows that she's safe there. She knows that he is the only one that can protect her and can offer the forgiveness that she needs. And she feels comfortable and safe. They always did. Sinners all throughout the Bible always felt comfortable with Jesus. They feel comfortable with us. Like we're supposed to be living that out. We're supposed to be the characteristics of Jesus. What salvation is supposed to be doing is creating us to be in the likeness of Jesus, right? Like, so what we're supposed to be doing. Are they comfortable around us? Could a prostitute walk in here and sit down and feel welcome here?
How many times have we heard people say, "I'm not good enough to go to church"?
That is it.
And that's the church's fault.
That's right. None of us are good enough to go to church. None of us. I'm not worthy to sit in Jesus' presence. I never have been. Only by grace and his forgiveness do I have the righteousness I need to walk in the presence to get into heaven. There's nothing about me that's good enough. Thank the Lord that there is forgiveness and grace. Otherwise, we'd have no hope. What a shame that sinners feel more comfortable somewhere else, right? The last one is extravagant generosity. This is the difference you see, right? This woman, and you've heard this is not new stuff. The perfume in an alabaster jar, that was not uncommon. So this would have been something that would have been very, very expensive. Probably a year's wages. I think this is what I've read a few times. As you think about like a year's salary, if I took my money and invested in one thing, that would be precious. Like I would keep that. I would try to save that. I wouldn't want to just waste all that. She takes that and pours every bit of it out. on Jesus' feet. Like, she's probably not going to be able to afford to buy another one of those, right? Like, this is it for her. And she empties every bit of it. Like, if you read other Gospels, you know that even the disciples thought, like, what is she doing? Like, you remember, was it Judas? I think Judas was like this lady, if she wanted to like do something good, she could have sold this and given the money to the poor. Like, that would have been helpful. That's what Jesus would have done, right? And Jesus is like, you don't even get it. Like, you think I need money? Like, I can just multiply bread and fish and feed everybody. Like, I don't need her money. I don't need your stuff to do my will. I can do my will. This is an illustration of her love for me. See, some gifts are good because of what they can do, and then some gifts are good because of what they attribute to who they are given. Right? This woman gives everything she has, in essence. Because she wouldn't have had a living quarters situation. Could have been questionable. She's a prostitute, so I don't really know. She's probably living in a group home. And then she has this. This is probably her only possession other than the clothes she's wearing, and she pours it out on Jesus' feet. And she is there weeping over her sin and fully just exposed and vulnerable in front of Jesus and in this very awkward situation. She is giving everything she has. You know, where the church talks about giving all the time, right? And we don't as much as some other places, and whatever. But that it's never about needing your money. Like, I think that's real important, because what you give to the ministry of Jesus Christ is not about. It is more about what that means to you than it does to what it's going to do. Because God doesn't need our money. If God wanted to pay our power bill, He would. Like, it would just be done, right? If God wanted us to have enough money to do, like, it would just happen. He doesn't need our money. He can create with a word, right? And so it's about what that means to you. Simon wasn't even willing to do the things he was supposed to do to be a gracious host, right? He wasn't even willing to give Jesus a little bit because of his position. And this woman is giving everything she has. Like, if you want a litmus test to know where you fall on this spectrum of fan and follower, what is your worship like? Are you accepting of others, or who in your circle is questionable? Like, you ever thought about that? Because in Jesus' circle, there's a bunch of questionable guys. Jesus didn't hang around with the church folk. Like, the disciples were a bunch of roughnecks, man. Like, you look at who they were. Like, that's not a group of people that would be like, man, let's get them on TV somewhere. Like, that wouldn't. It's not like, like, who's in your circle? Who's in your contact list that you could call right now that's like a questionable person? Are you accepting? Are there people that just aren't good enough to be included with you? So I'm not pointing fingers. Like, this is me. And there are periods in my life where I kind of had this arrogance about myself. Like, I'm here. And so if you're down here, you ain't going to get my time. But that was never Jesus. And he was way up there. Right? What's your worship like? Are you accepting of others? And then what's your giving like? Is your giving, does it show that God is really worth everything you have? Does it really show that? Like, if you were to look back in retrospect, it's like, well, yeah, wow, they gave so much. That God must be important. Like, the church must be a big deal. Look at how, is your giving, does it say that amount? Not the dollars and not that, but the amount. Like, your time, are you sacrificing time and resources, and are you giving up because this is more important? That's what giving shows. It's just where it stacks in your hierarchy. That's what giving is. And I think those three things, you see it is this picture in Luke chapter 7 of Jesus. And on one hand, he's got this prostitute who is completely devoted, who has given up everything, and she is following Jesus with things she's got. And then you got this religious guy who had done everything right his whole life, and he hadn't even started. And you know what the best part about this? We don't even know what happens next. Like, we don't know what happens. She gets up, walks out. She doesn't know if Simon comes around and says, hey, like, she's saved now. Come over here, have a seat. Like, we don't have any idea what happens. And I think that's important, because I think it's a question to us. I think it's what Jesus says to us. What are you going to do? This was the situation. What's Cross Creek going to do because of this? What are you going to do in light of knowing that this is how Jesus conducted business? What are you going to do? What are we going to do as a church? Are we going to be the kind of church that are followers who we are sold out, doing everything, and this is a place of worship, of just extravagant, unrestrained worship where we are accepting of others and where we give in such a way that it is a testimony to the importance of the gospel in our lives? Is that going to be our church? Or are we just going to be a bunch of Pharisees? Right? Because that's the difference. And when you're reading about fans and followers, God, that's the difference, y'all. And Jesus did this everywhere he went. And I think he was just trying to show people. It's like, I'm going to get these two people in a room just to show y'all what this looks like. Guaranteed. And then he'll leave here, he'll go down the road, and he'll do it again. And then he'll go somewhere else, and he'll do it. Everywhere he went, he was trying to show, like, y'all need to get this, because this is where half of y'all are just struggling, if not more, right? Fan or follower? I think it's a concept that has been kind of on my mind for 30 years, and it really I start to read the Bible differently because of that. So think about who you are. Think about the things in your life. Is that there for you? It's a good litmus test. Chapter 3, Luke chapter 7, he takes a little bit different look at that story than I did. So if you want to, if you hadn't read chapter 3, read chapter 3. It's good. It's real short. You can read it like in 10 minutes. So it's good stuff. All right, that's all we got because I'm going to be late again. We got to pray though. Let's pray and then we'll go. God, thank you so much again for your word. God, thank you for your church, for what it's meant to me in my life, for all that it has been for this community and what it can be. So God, I pray that as we gather together, God, just allow us to be the kind of church you want us to be, Father. Allow us to not necessarily be so self-conscious about our worship. God, allow us to be accepting of other people no matter who they are. And then, God, I pray that we will give in a way that shows your worth to us, Father. Just convict us as you see that you need to, God, to get us in line with your will and your purpose. And, God, just stir that affection in our hearts for you today. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.